Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Dave Higgins. Welcome to Sandbox Xplorer. Okay, so I talked about this game back in May in my May news and releases video, and I bought it back then, but I haven't gotten around to playing it because there's been a lot of games that have come out since then, and I've played some of them, and I've gotten a lot of them, so I'm trying to get to them. I can't do this full time yet. Hopefully one day I can do this full time, but right now I don't have that much time to dedicate, so I will dedicate as much as I can. So I did get around to this, and American Fugitive is a game that I have been loving. This game is super fun to play. It takes place in the 80s. You get framed for your father's murder. Police arrest you, you get sent to prison, and you're there. So eventually you end up busting out of prison and you end up going into Red Rock County, which is where this game takes place. Now, since you know that you're not guilty, you are wrongfully imprisoned for something you didn't do, and you don't want that, you want to clear your name. Now, you didn't necessarily have the cleanest record before you were in prison. You just didn't do that. So what you do is you go back to your life of crime, but you're trying to stay on the down low. You meet up with Dwayne. Dwayne runs a tow truck service, and you got to do some missions for him that involve different things. Sometimes you got to go and take his tow truck, and you got to go find a car and bring it back, get it spray painted, steal it. Got to do different things. He gets himself into some mess, so you got to clean up that mess sometimes, and it doesn't always work out for you, like I was saying. But eventually you move along in the story. You meet other characters too. There's a love interest, kinda. He's got a wife, you got a wife, but you know, you get this other girl who's Anna. She's kind of interesting to your character. She's leading a life of crime as well, and you're kind of intrigued by that. You follow her storyline, you get involved in all these other different crazy stories that, you know, it's not the most riveting, crazy, mind-blowing story out there, but it's pretty good. It's well put together, and it brings you down a few different paths, so twists and turns that you can kind of see some of them coming once in a while, but sometimes it's just out of left field and you're like, what? What's going on now? You get involved with the mayor, the corrupt government, the cops, this family that you've been feuding with, the mafia or a mob, I don't know, they're sort of like that. It all ties together and you gotta figure out what's going on. You can make choices through the story as you go along. They don't really affect the outcome. It's more so for your personal decisions to kind of just shape the way the story goes in the linear way that it does. But, you know, you don't have to do everything all at once. I would like to say that I do wish that there was like kind of side quests. There's just sort of like a few major characters that you have to do quests for. The only real kind of side quest there is there's this guy you have to like do work for, like construction style work, like dock work, it's forklifts and cranes and stuff like that, but that still ties into the story. So it's really all a fully storyline based game, but you can do it whenever you want, basically. You don't have to follow the story at any point in time, but if you want to progress in the game, you have to eventually do it. But you can just drive around, run around, shoot people, evade the cops, do whatever you want. Yeah. So yeah, I wish that there was like more stuff to do on the side, because I love side quests. They make games last way longer. Once you beat this game, which I have done, it sort of just ends. You can do whatever you want it, but you know, it's kind of like when I beat Dying Light, it was like, oh, there's so much I can do, and then as soon as the game was over, there isn't really a lot you can do. You just get to run around and do all the stuff that you've unlocked and whatever. But it's really fun up to that point, and you can play it over again. Honestly, it's a game that I feel like after a little while you'd probably pick it up again and play through the story. You get unlockables for your character, you get upgrade points by completing missions, you get cash that way as well, but you get, you know, 1, 2, 3 sometimes, and also through jumps that you find on the map, and when you find paintings, you can sell those to the art dealer. So there's different ways to get upgrade points, and you can add those to different skills, like your stamina for how long you can sprint, and the space in your backpack. Those are both really important. I upgraded those ones mostly first. But there's a bunch of different skill points you can add to a bunch of different abilities, like the probability of whether or not you get to tie someone up, or if they're gonna kick you out of the house and call the cops when you break in, or your melee damage for enemies, or whether or not they're paying attention, you'll do more damage. If or when you die in the game, you start out by a drain pipe again with your convict clothes and no supplies. You can also add skill points to allow to have supplies when you start over, and more depending on what you want to do with your style of play and how you want to play your game. One important factor of the game is actually breaking into houses and taking stuff. Sometimes it's for the story, sometimes you just need to get money. At first, when I played it, I saw that you have to go around the house and you peek in the windows and you case the place and you see if someone's occupying that space or not, and if they are, then you might want to stay away from that room. If they aren't, then go in there. But be careful, because if you don't case the place and you happen to go in, then you're going to get confronted by the person in that room, and depending on your skill level, what you have for possession, you may or may not be able to frighten them. If you just have your fist, it's a low percentage. If you have a gun or a flashlight, for some reason a flashlight one time had a really high percentage, but you know, different guns will scare the owner, and then you can either shoot them, which I've never done. I always tie them up with items that you find. You can find ropes, zip ties, handcuffs sometimes. If you can subdue them, then you can still continue around the house. The other complaint that I have about this is that no matter what, basically, when you break into the house, it immediately calls the cops, and like, that's even if there's nobody in the place. I kind of wish that they would patch that so it's only if you're in a house where somebody's already there, or you know, something like that, because it doesn't really make sense if no one's there. I guess they could have an alarm system, but maybe you could have it so you can upgrade and not trip those alarm systems, or be quieter breaking into a place. But overall it's okay, because you usually have enough time to root around the house. The thing about that is, at first I wasn't a huge fan of the way to navigate around the house. When you go in the house, you don't actually walk around the house. You get this display of the rooms in the house, like basically a top-down kind of blueprint, but not really, it's not a blueprint, but you know what I mean. It's an outline of the house with the rooms. You have to go into each room, and as the time goes down on the police counter until they get there, you have to then search the room, and searching the room makes the counter go down faster. And if you can get to all of them, great. If you can't, then you know, gotta get out of there. If you don't get out of there, they're gonna block the house, and when you get out of it, they're gonna go after you, and you're gonna have a lot of wanted stars. If you can get out in time, you can run away and they might not even know that it was you, and you can hide. But I did end up liking that. At first I wanted to be able to root around, but you know, I actually think that it's a really good way of going around the game. It's unique. I haven't seen that one before. I mean, it's probably been in games, but I don't know. I can't think of a time. So it's at least unique enough to me that I haven't seen it to my recollection. So yeah, the graphics on the game are nice. I like them. They're good. They're not insane. The only thing that I don't really get about it is that the graphics aren't like, they're not crazy, but everything does look really nice. The game kind of runs choppy at times, especially when you're driving, and I don't think that it should. I think that it hasn't really been optimized as well as it could have been, because I don't know. I know it's also on other systems, other consoles, but I still think that it's not that graphically demanding of a game that it shouldn't run smoothly, at least at 30 frames per second, because the frame rate drops pretty low when you're driving. Not always, but if you're off of the road, especially in like, you know, foliage areas with trees and there's a lot on the screen, I definitely notice a big slowdown. Not always, but enough. Enough that I mentioned it in this video. But when you're running around, then I haven't really noticed any running around frame rate issues, but it's mostly driving. Also, the loading times are pretty long, but you barely ever have to load. It's only really when you open the game up initially. It takes, in my mind, a lot longer than it should. Like, it makes Skyrim loading seem like fast. And this game is no Skyrim. But like I said, it's really just when you open up the game, and also the map is it's a pretty big map. It's not gigantic, but it's definitely not small. You don't feel limited. You don't feel like you run out of room to do stuff in. It's divided up kind of the way that Grand Theft Auto or Saints Row will do it, games like that, where you have a section of the map that you get to explore and play around in for the beginning courses of the story, and then as you progress in the story, you have access to another part of the map, and then further on you get the other part of the map. And there's 3 sections like that, and when you go from area to area over the bridges that they have there, then you have to load again for some reason. I don't know why it's set up that way. I feel like with the load time in the beginning, then it should be preloaded for the whole thing. But because of the way that it runs sometimes, I'm glad they did it that way, because it seems too choppy for that. But that's really the only major issues that I have had with it, and it wasn't enough for me to not want to play the game. It's just something that I feel like could have been prevented when they were making it. I don't know. It's weird, but it's still a fun game. It's still lots of fun. One thing I noticed about the game is that the controls feel really nice. It doesn't feel like you're gliding around too much when you're walking. It doesn't feel like it's too clunky. Like, it feels free. When you're driving, it doesn't feel too slidey. It could be a little tighter with the controls on driving, but you know, it's still good. Depending on what car you're driving, it's tighter or looser, you know, which also makes sense, but there's like top speeds on stuff that it kind of doesn't make sense for it to have it necessarily. Some of the stuff's really slow, some of the stuff's really fast, but that just comes with the territory, and that's okay. Like, the garbage truck is like super slow, super slow. I feel like it could go faster if you had a straightaway, but it's all right. And the van is also pretty slow, but then you got your really fast cars that go super fast, and sometimes it's hard to control, so you gotta kind of ease off a bit on the gas and get around corners. Navigating is a little bit weird at first with driving, especially because of the fact that it's a fixed top-down view. You can change the camera angle to follow you when you're driving, but it doesn't really follow you that well, in my opinion. I think that if the car was further back on the camera, it's kind of like on the top of the screen, and that's where you're going, so it's hard to anticipate what's going to be in front of you, even more so than when it's fixed, I feel like. So I'd rather just have it at that fixed angle, and it also is kind of too choppy to drive that way as well. The driving could be patched. I hope they do that. It's been out for a couple of months now, and I don't know. I don't know if they're really gonna patch that. I hope they do, because I'll play through it again for sure. But yeah, that's just something I wanted to note. One mechanic that I like a lot, that it's different than Grand Theft Auto or other games like that, is where you're wanted by the police when you do something. You also, in Grand Theft Auto, you can crash through like everything and anything, and as long as you don't directly like hit a cop car or kill someone right in front of a cop, then you can do whatever you want. And this, people will like call the cops on you for virtually anything you do. If you drive through a fence, then they're gonna call the cop for property damage. If you hit a car, they're gonna get hit and run. If you kill someone, they're gonna call them on you especially. But you know, I really like that it's a little more realistic in that sense, where if you do something illegal, then you're gonna get chased for it. The people in the town will like interact and have like a thought bubble over their head where they're like, what was that? Or stuff like that. When you're around doing stuff, you can hide from them. You can upgrade your crouching skills, so when you crouch, you're less likely to be detected. That's also an important one. But what I do like is that when you are getting chased by the cops, you can actually find like clotheslines out in the game where there's people hanging their clothes to dry, and if you take those, they'll be looking for you wearing whatever you were reported wearing it, and if it's different, then they won't look for you anymore. If you're being chased, they might see you change, and then you'll still be wanted by that, but it's a cool mechanic that I haven't seen before. Same thing with the vehicle that you're driving. If they see you driving one vehicle, then they'll be looking for that vehicle. If you change vehicles, then you can hide. Back to the controls for a second. I didn't finish what I was saying with that. The way that the vehicles feel in the world, I really like that. You know, when you're driving through different terrains, you can feel that you're driving through some dirt, on the pavement, the grass, like just different areas, and it affects the way that you drive, and it leaves tire marks, so it feels like you're really in the world, and it's really cool. You jump over fences automatically as you run over them. You can run for limited times. I talked about upgrading your sprint earlier. Eventually you can run for like a lot longer, but at first you gotta kind of be careful when you do it, because you might need to run from the cops around a building or something like that, or you need to try to evade someone, and you're gonna choose your times when you're gonna sprint, because if you run out of your sprinting, then they're gonna see you longer and they're gonna catch up to you. I've actually come to find that it's kind of a lot harder to evade the cops once you have a high star count in this than it is in Grand Theft Auto sometimes, because they're really on you in this game, and you know, I've escaped from them a bunch of times, so it's possible, but it's difficult sometimes. Once that chopper's on you, it's got you for a bit until you can really find the way to escape, and it makes you earn it, so I like that. You pick up different items throughout the world. You can find, you know, rocks and wrenches and stuff like that that you can use for breaking into cars or breaking into houses, crowbars. You can also find guns, different guns on the ground. You can find ammunition. If you end up fighting with the cops and you kill them, that's a good way to get a lot of guns. Another thing that is noteworthy is that when I talked about changing your clothes to avoid the cops, if you can somehow manage to get a cop uniform, then it says in the game at least that when you have that on, your wanted level goes down faster. So, you know, there have been times where I have 5 stars and I just rather try to get that star count down and be able to keep like the faster star reduction than find a new outfit, new attire, but it's not always a good option, so you gotta kind of change it up a bit. There's a good amount of clothing options in the game. There's like suits, and there's the cop uniform, there's, you know, like plaid shirts with jeans. You can also wear dresses, which looks kind of funny. You just pick it up off the line and you run around in a dress and they might be looking for you. Don't just take off your clothes if they're chasing you, because you'll get like 0 stars for a second, but as soon as anyone sees you, they're gonna report that there's a man in his underwear. So maybe for a second you might need to lose them, but you're probably gonna have them right back on you, and then you don't have that option again for a while, so not really the best option. But there's actually a pretty good amount of guns in the game. There's like handguns, there's shotguns, and there's automatic rifles. I think that's really about it, but there's different deviations of those, and you can pick up ammo for them and run around the world and use them with you have the right joystick that you aim with, and you run around with the left one, you fire with the right trigger. But you can even use like a lead pipe or a crowbar as a weapon. You can get a nightstick from a cop. The cop car is one of, if not the fastest car in the game, so I take those a lot. I'm usually dressed up as a cop in the game because less stars, fast car. There is one story mission where they take all your guns for a second, and then I expect, as with most games where they do that, you get them all back, but I didn't. That only happened that one time, but I was kind of pissed about it. So I had to acquire them again, but it's not that hard to acquire, and it's not like you need the... Whenever you lose items in the game, you're like, damn, but it's not that big of a deal because you get them all back pretty quickly anyways from just doing stuff. I wouldn't mind seeing a multiplayer in the game. I don't know how they might exactly implement it, especially with the just single player mode having the choppiness to it with the frame rate. If they could fix that and add an ability for another player to play in the game with you, maybe even 2 or 3 other players, because I don't know, I feel like that's the kind of game that would be a lot of fun to play with people. But a single player game is great. I never am upset about a really good single player game. This one is worth it. It's only 30 bucks. It's not an expensive game. It's not a super crazy game, but it's really fun. I like it a lot. I recommend it to anyone who likes sandbox games, open world, GTA kind of games, because I don't know, those games are fun. So if you find those fun, you're probably gonna like this game. So that covers it pretty much, I'd say. If you are interested in this game, then check it out. I'll put a link to it in the description down below. Like this video if you like this video. Subscribe if you want to hear more, and hit that bell so you get notified whenever I release a video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.